Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I thought I would talk a little bit about the blue wool test. It was initially created for the textile industry, and the American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists, along with the American Standard Test Measure, got together and worked this out, so the printing industry now uses this unit of measure for light fastness too. Now, what does that even mean? So basically, two identical samples are created. They take pigment, they put it on a test card, and then one side is covered up as the control in the shade, and the other side is subjected to the light. So this would be the control strip, and this side would be placed with a cover over it so it doesn't receive any light, and this side would get the light. Now, these are thin vertical cards that are stuck into a machine that kind of looks like a microwave with a cylinder inside, and they place the card strips in there, close the door, turn it on, set the humidity to 40%, and then set the light to be the equivalent. It's an artificial illumination that's really close to the sun that gives it the equivalent of about 3 months of sunshine. Now, the other thing they put in with it is the blue wool test. Now, this is a sample of 8 dies, and each one is a little bit different than the other, and I'm going to try my best to do this so it is really obvious on screen for you, but you can see how they're getting lighter and lighter. So this would be my blue wool test strip card, and they fade in geometric progression. Is twice as long as the preceding. So this one takes twice as long to fade as this one. This one takes twice as long to fade as this one, and so on and so forth. They're rated 1 to 8. 8 is the most light fast. It is considered, obviously it's considered light fast, it's considered permanent, and 1 rating would be the worst. When they pop these in their little synthetic sun, tester, and they take it out, they then look at this and measure the fading by looking at what it would be over here. And let's say we cook this and put this in the machine, and it comes out and it looks really close. This is 876. It looks like a 5. They would look at the fading amount. Oh, hi, cat. Hi. Apparently she has an interest in the blue wool test as well. They would look at the fading amount, they would remove this, see the amount, and then sort of try and calibrate it, measure up to see what the difference is. Now, I happen to use blue here as the sample test, but it's for all colors, all pigments. So they would have to then align and try and figure out the amount that has faded. So, in doing so, let's see. There are other testing processes. There is the grayscale, which is 1 to 5, and then 5 being the most excellent light fast and 1 being the worst. There is the ASTM, the American Standard Test Measure, and that is a Roman numeral system where the I is the equivalent to a 7 or 8 on the blue wool scale, and the V would be considered a 1. It would be considered the worst. So a lot of in-house, a lot of art supply companies use the blue wool scale. I know Derwent does. A lot of times when they are advertising a new product, it will say they used this scale. Some companies use their own in-house that they come up with. Now, where is the problem? Let's see, can you see all that? So if the problem is, if you live, they're trying to simulate UV ultraviolet rays because that's what causes the fading. If you live near the equator, you're actually getting more UV rays. So if you're in Ecuador or, I don't know, Republic of the Congo or the Maldive Islands or something, the sun is more directly overhead. The UV lights travel the shortest distance in the atmosphere, and therefore you get more sun. It's why those areas are warmer. Equator places get more UV light. So they're trying to come up with a way where it's universally tested. It's a 3-month stretch. Can this work? Maybe. So if your product gets an 8 on a scale, or, you know, an I on the ASTM, if you leave it in the summer in the direct sun for exposure, it won't fade for 1.5 years. That is what they're saying with an 8. They're also saying if you put the pigment in under normal display conditions, it's framed, it's out of the light, it should last 100 years without fading. So when you're doing your own home testing, know that these companies only tested for 3 months. So if they're saying something is really light fast and you're testing it for 1 year, 2 years, and it's not fading, you have a wonderful product. But some reasons why your light fast watercolor is fading. So when a product says it's light fast and you've done your own testing, or it's come back and somebody's like, hey, my stuff's fading, I'm going to list off some reasons as to why that might be. So 1, this testing was created for textiles. It wasn't for the print industry. 2, they only test for 3 months. And you can't guarantee where somebody's going to hang their art if you give it to them or sell it to them. They could be hanging it where it sees sunshine and they could have it up on their wall for 10 years. 3, sometimes when they go to test these pigments, these dyes, they will test it with acrylic paint. And acrylic paint has a polymer binder. They won't test it with watercolor. Watercolor has a gum arabic binder and it reacts differently to sunlight. So if they're testing a dye and they're like, yep, that's light fast, and they tested it on acrylic, it may not be light fast with watercolor. The other reason is they could be testing the watercolor full strength. It is full, opaque, nothing's diluted when they go and create their test strip. That could also be why your stuff is fading. And then again, living near the equator. Heat, pH changes, acidity, humidity, air pollution, all these affect your art and light fastness. Companies can also be making mistakes, like if they just misinformed about the pigments, they could have a lack of pigment knowledge. They could be doing improper testing. So some companies do their own in-house testing and they could screw up. Some brands don't even test at all. And they just copy their information from old pigment studies. So they could find a pigment study from 30 years ago of a thing that doesn't exist, or a company isn't around anymore. And if that company had said it's light fast, they just copy that. I know pigment powder manufacturers, they have their own. And a lot of companies will just take information off of what they've said and just trust. If they say that that's light fast, the company will trust it without verifying it. Reds fade more because they absorb more UV light. Blue and black are more stable. They absorb less. I hope this helps. I hope this kind of explains. I'll link a video where a woman, it's dubbed or it's translated, and she is doing the actual blue wool test and showing how you cut the strips and attach them to these little vertical deck cards and then stick them in the machine and let it spin around. They face the light and they spin around and they get subjected to that 3 months of light, so to speak. It's an artificial illumination, accelerated, because could you imagine if they had 1 billion windows and they were sticking little strips in the windows? That would be something else. So I hope this helped you. I hope this explains why maybe, you know, you purchased something and it's not behaving the way you thought it would. Also, I think I'm gonna try and get my cat in the frame because she wants to say hi. Do you want to say hi? All right, have a good day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.